playoff series we cared the most about. That's Montreal and Winnipeg, the series of the underdogs. And I think ESPN had like their projections of this series. I think one person had Montreal winning, and they had them in 7. So, but they were up 2. I doubt it. I don't think it was Greg Wyshynski because he just hates the Habs.
Eric Engels went against them again.
No, it wasn't Sportsnet.
Okay.
I think they've learned their lesson because that's 2 years in a row they've completely gone against Montreal and they've just slapped them in the face. I don't know. Oh, the media. If the Leafs lose in the first round this year, they have to trade one of the big guys. They lose in the first round again. One more year, and if they lose again, they have to... Ridiculous. Sportsnet. I can't stand it sometimes. Gary Galley, less is more on color commentary, by the way. I almost muted the game last night because I couldn't listen to the Islanders. It was brutal. Anyway, the Habs are up 2-0 in the series. They win. You can't draw up a more perfect start to a series for a road team. You know that famous saying, you're only in trouble unless you lose in home ice. Well, the Jets lost their first 2 home games to the Habs. Lot to unpack here, and I think the first thing we got to mention, Mark Scheifele suspended 4 games for charging Jake Evans in Game 1. In my video, I thought it was a completely dirty hit. I thought it was unnecessary. I thought it was charging, regardless if he stopped taking strides. He had all the speed behind him. Your guys' take on the hit itself, and then also what you think of the 4 games, one of which has been served by now. I'll start here with Alex.
Yeah, I thought the hit was unnecessary. I thought, in my opinion, there was the intent to injure, which I think was the main point of the Department of Player Safety video. And that's kind of where I thought the suspension was going to come from. I thought the actual suspension itself honestly, I was surprised they gave him 4 games, just considering the Department of Player Safety. But I think that was the right. In my opinion, that was the right amount of games.
Mm-hmm. Daniel,
I don't know. When I saw the play the first time, I just figured that, man, Mark Scheifele, he just let it go, let the empty net goal, let it go, and just keep on going because that was only Game 1, and a lot of the times we talk about players, we want to see more of the emotion, more of the character kind of things, and I think sometimes when things are just so closed off, so conservative, so narrow about the team mentality, I feel like these emotional outbursts just come out of nowhere. And then I don't know, this is just one of those moments where what are you doing? Of all players, I didn't think Mark Scheifele would do that. And I think that was a big surprising thing everyone thought about because he doesn't have a history of this. He's not a young guy, just learning the game, or he's had so many experiences with this. He is someone who is probably, when they have the 1B captain on the team, I think of it's Mark Scheifele, and for him to be really reckless with that was really disappointing for me as a fan.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was just you brought something up, Daniel, about him not having the history, and I just want to point out that regardless. For whatever reason, when someone not named Kadri or Ryan Reeves or Tom Wilson get into something, a lot of people's first reaction, and sometimes myself as well, is, well, the guy has no history. I'm like, but that's not, no one's talking about that here. That's not the point. The point is, this is the play that happened. And we saw it happen a lot with Alex Edler. When the knee on knee with Zach Hyman, and I'm like, guys, I'm thinking in my head, this isn't the point. The point isn't his history. His history will determine the length of suspension, but that doesn't determine the intent of the play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He didn't try and save the goal, and even in the player explanation video from Player Safety, they said we acknowledge Mark Scheifele's explanation to try and prevent a goal. Although the video shows that he clearly did not. They completely called him out on it. I've never seen that from Player Safety either. That they just very clearly were no, this guy's completely full of it. The fact that a casual fan may not understand just how much this is of Player Safety throwing the book at Mark Scheifele. 4 games in the second round for someone who is not a repeat offender. That's for the NHL. That's unheard of from what I can think of in recent memory, at least. And again, it was completely deserved. Whether he meant to concuss him, I don't think that. But he wanted to not injure, but he wanted to hurt. Yeah. He wanted to finish that hard check on Jake Evans. Now, it's been said, like Jake Evans in that kind of play, trying his best to get the wraparound, to get the empty netter, was expecting to get hit. I don't think you expect a guy to travel nearly 200 feet and have all that momentum going into it, too. And even the call on the ice was a charging major. It's ridiculous, man. And I really hope he didn't travel to Montreal with the team, or if he did, maybe if he's at the game tonight, they show him on the Jumbotron and you just let the Habs fans rip into him. Boos, obviously. Him getting personally attacked in his family is not acceptable, obviously. No. But I love how after that press conference, everyone took Mark Scheifele's side all of a sudden, including Ron McLean, who spent a majority of his opening thing being like, we love the Scheifele family. And it was like, oh yeah, Jake Evans, wish you're okay too. The guy who got concussed and stretchered off the ice on his and his father's birthday.
And yeah, and that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, why is this always? I think bare minimum, like, it's not okay to attack a player like personally or his family or like
never.
I think that, yeah, like that's just the bare minimum, that the fact that we have to, every time we talk about it, it's the major changing point in terms of how we view something is like, guys, there is the play. Here it is. Either look at it properly or like, I don't know what else to say here. Like, this is what happened. It's not acceptable that players are being personally attacked and their families. And it's like their history is, to us, should be irrelevant. Like, this is what happened. It's very clear.
Mm-hmm. First off, by the way, get well soon, Jake Evans. Dom Ducharme did say today that he's feeling better, but there's still no timetable to his return. Now, in the meantime, Trey Lekin is drawn back into the lineup. He's healthy now, and he's been taking that top spot. It's all of a sudden left a giant hole down the middle for the Jets. Stastny traveled with the team for Game 3 today. He did not play in Game 2. Obviously, Mark Scheifele is not playing, so that had Pierre-Luc Dubois going to the top line. What was really interesting is Kelly Hrudey and Cassie Campbell-Pascal were like, yeah, we like what we're seeing from him after the first period. And then Kevin Bieksa, which I've never seen this before on a Sportsnet broadcast, said, I just don't agree with you guys. And talked about how he didn't like him going to how he wasn't driving to the net enough, creating more offense. And, that's kind of what you expect from Pierre-Luc Dubois, looking back at his playoff performances in Columbus. It's a lot to ask for the guy, but that's what they brought him in for. And if the series is far from over, obviously. It's a completely different one if they win tonight in Montreal. Though, if the Jets have any hope of getting back into this series, Pierre-Luc Dubois has to be the first, and it has to be the first guy to step up his game.
Yeah, I think what he was brought in to be, to either play the left side or be a center again. That's something he has to kind of prove right now. Crazy how that was such a big story for us is the center depth and how depleted it's become already for the Jets at the most crucial time. But I think with Dubois, I didn't know this was this stat that he hasn't scored in 22 games. Like, he's been a great playmaker, but his last goal was April 5th.
I did not know that.
I think that the way he's kind of classified as that power forward type of center, this type of guy that, he wanted to get out of Columbus and kind of be in a bigger market and be that guy. I think now he has to show it because he's been great as a playmaker, but they need more from him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think when they brought in Pierre-Luc Dubois, the idea was, in my eyes, the idea was, okay, well, is Paul Stastny enough in the long run to be a second line center? And my answer was no. So bringing in Pierre-Luc Dubois fit that hole. But what it also does is, in Columbus, Pierre-Luc Dubois was the guy. Like, he was their number one center. And I thought that, especially that playoffs against Toronto and before that, he played really well in that role. So when you're missing Mark Scheifele for 4 games, you expect that Pierre-Luc Dubois can take that next step. And he's not going to be as effective as Mark Scheifele per se, but he should be able to take that next step in that role, especially playing next to the guys that Mark Scheifele plays with.
Mm-hmm. Their center depth is just another part of their roster, by the way, that seems to be losing bodies by the period at this point. Like Andrew Kopp took a shot that it hurt him. Dylan DeMello is going to be out for a couple of days, apparently. After game 2, it was about a week. So that's a massive loss on already pretty thin defensive core for the Jets. Looking at Montreal, though, their defensive core has been the real story. They didn't have a point against the Leafs, I'm pretty sure, but right into game 1, Edmondson had a pair of assists. He was at one point working the power play because Gustafsson was bad. Jeff Petrie with that wicked slap pass to Nick Suzuki in game 1 was and Ben Sherratt, I think, is in serious consideration. That we talk about Conn Smythe like candidates. Like right now, I think in Colorado, I'm actually leaning towards Philip Grubauer right now. In Montreal, everyone will talk about Carey Price, but the way Ben Sherratt is playing, like there's like Duncan Keith when he won the Conn Smythe vibes right now. The minutes he's playing, like the play on he made on Kyle Connor in the dying minutes of the first period of game 2. I think it's taken me a while to really appreciate Ben Sherratt's game. The minute muncher stuff at one point, but he's really stepped up in the playoffs, and he's making me personally eat a lot of crow for what I said about him in the regular season. I'm very happy to do so because Ben Sherratt is he's been Montreal's most important defenseman in these playoffs. He's been incredible, like simply said.
Yeah, I mean, he still plays with Shea Weber. Is that still a pairing?
Right. Yeah.
And when you have a not healthy Shea Weber, someone has to step up, right? And who better than the guy playing next to him? Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of what's happening here in my eyes.
Is this truly Ben Sherratt's revenge?
I think so. They could really use him right now. When they lost Trouba and they lost Tyler Myers, Ben Sherratt left at the same time. I think a lot of people, I think that loss went under the window, especially because he only makes $3.5 million too.
It's not that flash, but yeah, it's something that you do need in the lineup.
Oh, yeah, especially in the play. Like, you talk about, by the way, Mark Scheifele. The frustration didn't come out of nowhere in game 1. The guy who was pushing him all night was Ben Sherratt. He was legit. Everything he was trying to do to Austin Matthews in round 1, and, Matthews was laughing it off. Mark Scheifele responded the way he did in game 1 to Ben Sherratt. Not to mention, at the same time, you guys, I forget which Jets player it was. I think it was Matthew Perreault, who was like getting distracted off the faceoff because Corey Perry was chirping him from the bench. Like, what are you doing there? And that's another thing for Montreal that's been really, really good. The line of Joel Armia, Eric Stahl, and Corey Perry, the christened washing machine line, I believe is what they're called now. Like, dude, like Stahl had those pair of breakaways, and honestly, he was moving at a snail's pace. But it's amazing how much pressure these guys are putting on. Like, they are such a weird depth threat scoring line all of a sudden for Montreal, and I don't know where it came from.
No, I think that's what is making Montreal successful. In that, I think when you think of the playoffs, you expect your big guys to show up. So people say that cancels each other out in terms of the two teams, but it's your depth that will win you playoff rounds per se. In that, like, if they're on, that's where you're going to beat the other team in those situations.
You call them the scoring pain in the butt line.
Yeah, that's like, if you see those guys coming over the board, you're like, God damn it. Like, they're going to finish their checks. They go hard to the net. Like, they are legit the last line you want to play against. They're super annoying, like in the best way, obviously. I feel like I know what it's like to be an Islanders fan now, by the way that the Habs are very much playing like them, like patiently waiting for chances and just sitting on the blue line. And like game 2 felt like 6 hours. It was the most boring game, like most boring playoff game I've ever watched. Like you take the wins, obviously, and they continue to do the model of making their goaltender's life easy up until the last few minutes when he presses us off 8 shots odd and was great. Shout out to his 8th career playoff shutout, by the way. That was pretty sick. Defensive masterclass is coming from Montreal all of a sudden. And I don't think I was expecting this. Because, again, during the regular season, their defense was getting just – they couldn't play in their own zone. Like, what happened? Like, is this Donald texted me the other day and he's like, I want to get your opinion on something. I said, okay. It's like, after beating the Leafs, has Marc Bergevin and Dom Ducharme secured their jobs? I'm like, okay, well, like the reports have been that Bergevin has an offer on the table and it's really up to him. And apparently he has 1 more year anyway, which was like, wait, what? Okay. If they do the thing, you're like, okay, yeah, obviously, like people come back, right? I hate to say this, but I think Donald Ducharme's actually earned a shot because, like, obviously you don't lose Joe Bouchard. Like, please don't, pay him all the money. But, like, you got to realize, point I made in my video, Dom Ducharme has, and by the way, the Habs are on their first 5-game winning streak since 2017. That includes the regular season. I was amazed and at the same time so disappointed to actually see that. Anyway, though, in these 5 games, the Habs have never trailed. Just funny fact there. And this whole performance has come off of when Montreal finally got some time to maybe put a system together. Maybe this isn't Ducharme's ideal lineup, though you can't deny the fact. And like at some point, he has to get credit. Because I don't think Montreal are getting a ton after the Leafs series. Because every time I listen to a breakdown, it's ridiculous. Like, oh my God, overtimes and all this kind of close stuff. And then game 1 against the Jets was like, oh, the Jets are rusty. Game 2, oh, Scheifele. And like, I'm sorry, but like, at what point do you give credit to the team that is winning hockey games? And at some point, if they could beat the Jets at least, how do you justify not giving Ducharme another shot? Like Bergevin at this point, I'm so fed up with the guy because he's a roller coaster. Like the highs and lows are just so weird with Berge, but at the same time, like to date, including the Leafs playoff win, it's 4 series wins since 2012, which is obviously not good enough.
Right.
But I think Ducharme's earned it. Unless Bouchard's like, I'm going to leave, then you say, okay, bye. We kind of need this guy more importantly, but I think he's earned it.
The analysis, I agree with you, is just because when Montreal's not getting that credit, I think it's just the flash of things where that was the big story in the North Division was first the Leafs, and then it was the Jets, and just the way these teams are built, the way they play. And I think now just with Montreal, it's just what you said with the whole highs and lows of things. It was always just a bit of a question mark of what this team is. Like, we know they did really well in the offseason. We gave them the Kings of the Offseason award. And now that there's a system there, it's just, I think maybe the coverage or the credit has to catch up to it now. That the way they're playing, they could firmly establish now, I think, in the last 2 games with the Jets or even the last few games with the Leafs, is just that's what the system is now, and it's working.
By the way, I forgot to mention this. Shout out to Nick Ehlers for protecting Jake Evans in that scrum after game 1. That was pretty classy. Former player of Dom Ducharme back in the Halifax days. By the way, there's nothing like anytime if we ever get to talk to Nick Ehlers, we have to talk to him about his Moosehead days because everyone seems to love that team and like playing for that organization. What was I going to say? I don't even remember it. Oh yeah, that's I do. So underappreciated, undercovered, and never giving credit, but they're surprising people for consecutive years now. There's another Islanders comparison there. All of a sudden, underrated, appreciated defenseman in Jeff Petrie, like Ryan Pulak. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. And the big thing is Montreal are buying into the system. Like everyone knows their role all of a sudden. Like everybody knows, like, okay, so this forward has to support the defenseman here. The battles are winning in the neutral zone. All of a sudden, Montreal, like a defenseman will never jump into the play when unnecessary. They're buying into it, guys. Like I'm liking what I'm seeing. I'm liking what I'm seeing going into games 3 tonight.
You surprised me, by the way, with that comparison.
Which comparison?
Like the Islanders one, because I thought you were gonna say this looks a lot like 1993 playoffs.
Okay.
I thought you were gonna say something like that.
People are mentioning 93, and I'm like, okay, like listen, calm down, because like 93 was a weird team, right? Because like obviously that was the year Pittsburgh were supposed to win, and the Islanders upset them, right? And then obviously at the other end you got Wayne Gretzky. It's like okay, yeah, but like you got to remember, like it still had Muller and like Don Fuss that had like 100-point seasons then. Tyler Toffoli was the big guy with 28 goals. Like shortened season, that's great, but like it would, if they did the thing again, it would be that magical. But to get there, they have to beat the Jets. Hellebuck's going to get mad eventually. You don't want that. Nick Ehlers too. You have to then go through one of Vegas or Colorado, and there's a real scenario that the Habs, like think about it like this. The possibility is alive for a Habs Bruins Cup final. Or it's the Islanders, and could you imagine how boring that series would be? Montreal Islanders, there'd be no scoring. It'd be hilarious.
Everyone's in the neutral zone.
It would just be like 1-4 checker. It's ridiculous. Or Tampa Bay, the reigning defending Cup champions. Or Sebastian Aho, the double agent. Like the magic is there, but like there's a lot to do there. Like you can't celebrate a cup win and compare yourself to a magical team when you are only 6 wins into a playoff run and are only halfway through one series against a very high-scoring Jets team.
What's funny is that sorry, Adam. It's pretty funny. In 2 minutes, we went from the Habs are not getting the appreciation they deserve, and we're not giving them enough credit, especially the mass media. And then we went from that to comparing them to a cup team.
You compared them to 93. And the Habs and the fan base has, but like, listen, anytime you mention 93 to a Habs fan, it's like magic. I mean, there's 2 goalies.
More magic than 86.
Okay, dude. Okay, you got to remember, like, okay, we're not going into a 93. We're not doing a 93 deep dive. It's like 93. I think you can like if Ottawa had won in 2017, like that's a kind of like no one thought they were going to be like Waugh had a bad year like in 92. It was really weird, right?